Growing up as Catherine Sterling's daughter wasn't easy. Every breath I took, every step I made was carefully monitored and judged. My father, the CEO of Sterling Global, had my entire life planned out before I could even walk. "Isabella, darling," he'd say, adjusting his perfectly pressed Armani suit. "A Sterling never settles for second best." Our mansion in Beverly Hills stood as a testament to that philosophy. It was 28 rooms of carefully curated luxury, each one screaming wealth and power. But to me, it felt more like a golden cage than a home. By the time I turned 25, I had followed my father's blueprint perfectly. Harvard Business School graduate, junior executive at Sterling Global, and engaged to Montgomery Kensington IV, heir to Kensington Technologies, and my father's hand-picked choice for my husband. There was just one small problem. I was desperately, hopelessly in love with someone else. I met Lucas Wright on a rainy Tuesday morning when my Ferrari broke down on the way to work. He was the mechanic who came to my rescue, arriving in a beaten-up tow truck with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Looks like your timing belt is shot," he said, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." Something about his honest brown eyes and the way he explained everything without talking down to me made me agree to wait at his small garage instead of calling an Uber. That decision changed my life forever. Over cups of terrible vending machine coffee, I discovered Lucas wasn't just any mechanic. He had worked his way through engineering school, graduating top of his class. He could have taken a cushy corporate job, but he loved working with his hands, solving problems, and making things better. "Life's too short to spend it doing something just because it looks good on paper," he told me, his eyes twinkling. Those words hit me like a thunderbolt. For the first time, someone had put into words exactly what I had been feeling all my life. One coffee led to another, then dinner, then stolen moments whenever I could escape my suffocating world. Lucas never asked about my family's wealth, never tried to impress me with fancy restaurants or expensive gifts. Instead, he showed me the joy of simple things. Midnight drives along the coast, picnics in hidden parks, and laughter. So much laughter. For 6 months, I lived a double life. Society princess by day, myself by night. But I knew it couldn't last forever. The breaking point came during a charity gala at our mansion. Montgomery was droning on about merger strategies to anyone who would listen, while my mother paraded me around like a prize thoroughbred. "Isabella will be taking over the East Coast operations after the wedding," she announced to yet another group of socialites. The Kensingtons and Sterlings imagined the possibilities. I felt like I was suffocating. Excusing myself, I fled to the garden, my trembling fingers already dialing Lucas's number. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered into the phone, tears streaming down my face. "I can't marry Montgomery. I can't be who they want me to be." Lucas was silent for a moment before speaking. "Then don't be. Be who you are, Isabella. That's the person I fell in love with." That night changed everything. The next morning, I walked into my father's study, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. "Daddy, I need to tell you something." My voice shook slightly. "I can't marry Montgomery. I'm in love with someone else." The explosion that followed was nuclear. My father's face turned purple as I explained about Lucas, about wanting a different life than the one he planned. "A mechanic!" he roared, his fist slamming onto his mahogany desk. "My daughter, a Sterling, in love with a grease monkey. He's an engineer, Daddy, and he's brilliant. If you just meet him." "Absolutely not." My father's voice could have shattered glass. "You will marry Montgomery as planned. Or you can forget about your trust fund, your position at the company, everything. Is that clear?" I stood up straighter, channeling strength I didn't know I had. "Crystal clear." "Daddy, goodbye." Walking out of that study was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My mother's hysterical tears, my father's threats, the whispers of the household staff. It all followed me as I packed a small bag and left the only home I'd ever known. Lucas was waiting for me outside his modest apartment, worry etched on his face. When I told him what happened, he tried to talk me out of it. "Isabella, that's your whole life you're giving up. Your family, your inheritance. I can't let you do that for me." I silenced him with a kiss. "I'm not giving up my life, Lucas. I'm finally starting it. The next few months were a crash course in reality. I moved into Lucas's one-bedroom apartment, got a job as an entry-level business consultant at a small firm, and learned how to live on a budget. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in my life, I felt free. My parents' attempts to bring me to my senses ranged from emotional manipulation to outright threats. They froze my accounts, canceled my credit cards, and even tried to get me fired from my new job. But with each obstacle, Lucas and I grew stronger together. When we decided to get married, we planned a simple ceremony in a local park. No designer dress, no society photographers, just us and a few close friends. The morning of the wedding, I received a text from my mother. "Your father and I will be attending. One last chance to fix this mistake." My heart raced as I showed Lucas the message. He squeezed my hand. "It's your call, love. Whatever you want." I wanted them there. Despite everything, they were still my parents. So when I walked down the makeshift aisle in my simple white dress from a department store, my eyes instantly found them standing at the back. My father looked like he'd swallowed something sour, while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Neither moved to join the ceremony. During the reception, a casual barbecue in the park, they made their final play. "Isabella, darling," my mother's voice dripped with desperation. "It's not too late. Montgomery would still take you back. Think about what you're throwing away." My father cut straight to the point. "This is your last chance, young lady. Stay with this person, and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that what you want? To live in poverty?" I looked at Lucas, who was chatting and laughing with our friends, completely at ease in his rented suit. Then I looked at my parents, trapped in their world of wealth and expectations. "What I want," I said clearly, "is to be happy. Lucas makes me happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't need your money or you in our lives." My father's face turned that dangerous shade of purple again. "You're no daughter of mine," he spat, turning on his heel. My mother hesitated for a moment, then hurried after him. As they stormed away, Lucas appeared at my side, wrapping an arm around my waist. "You okay?" I leaned into him, watching my past walk away. Never better. If Isabella's journey of finding the courage to choose love over expectation resonates with you, please consider subscribing and sharing this story. Your support helps me continue creating content that inspires. That was 6 months ago. We settled into our life together, working hard, loving harder. Lucas continued at his garage while taking night classes for his master's degree, and I threw myself into my consulting work, building my own client base. We were happy, truly happy, even if we had to watch our spending and clip coupons. But there was something Lucas hadn't told me, something that was about to turn my world upside down again. Everything changed on a seemingly ordinary Friday evening. I came home from work early, excited to surprise Lucas with takeout from our favorite Thai place. But our apartment was empty, with a hastily scribbled note on the counter. "Working late at the garage. Love you." It wasn't unusual for Lucas to work late, but something felt different. Lately, he'd been distracted, taking mysterious phone calls and working odd hours. A knot formed in my stomach as my mind wandered to dark places. Was history repeating itself? Was I about to lose everything again? Unable to sit still, I decided to bring dinner to him at the garage. But when I pulled up, the place was dark. Lucas's beaten-up truck wasn't in its usual spot. My hands trembled as I called his number, straight to voicemail. Just as panic started to set in, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Wright, please come to 1875 Highland Avenue immediately. It's about your husband." My heart stopped. Highland Avenue was in the industrial district, miles from Lucas's garage. With shaking fingers, I typed the address into my GPS and drove through the darkening city, imagining worst-case scenarios. The GPS led me to a massive modern building with sleek glass walls. Security gates opened automatically as I approached, and a uniformed guard directed me to an underground parking garage. "Mrs. Wright," he nodded respectfully. "Take the executive elevator to the top floor." Executive elevator? Top floor? What was going on? The elevator opened into a stunning office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And there, standing at a glass desk with his back to me, was Lucas. But not the Lucas I knew. Gone were the worn jeans and oil-stained t-shirt. Instead, He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than our monthly rent. When he turned around, his familiar warm smile was tinged with nervousness. "Bella," he said softly, using his special nickname for me. "I think it's time I told you everything." Before he could continue, the office door burst open. And there, like a scene from my worst nightmare, stood my father, mother, and Montgomery Kensington IV. "What is the meaning of this?" my father thundered, his face already turning that familiar shade of purple. "Security," said Isabella, "was headed up here. What are you doing in the CEO's office?" You mechanic." Lucas straightened his tie and walked around the desk. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, I am the CEO. Lucas Wright, founder and chief executive officer of Wright Dynamics." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother grabbed a chair for support, Montgomery's mouth hung open unattractively, and my father, for the first time in my life, was speechless. But, my mother stammered. "You're a mechanic." Lucas smiled, taking my hand. "I own a chain of auto repair shops." Yes, it was my first business, started with a loan from my college professor. But Wright Dynamics is my main focus. We're a tech company specializing in revolutionary electric vehicle batteries. That's what those late nights at the garage were about. We were finalizing our new prototype. My head was spinning. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to know," Lucas said softly, turning to face me. "When we met, I had just made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Every woman I dated was only interested in my money, my status. But you fell in love with me when I was just a mechanic. You gave up everything for me. I had to be sure." "Wright Dynamics," my father muttered, his business mind finally catching up. "The company that just revolutionized electric vehicle battery technology? The one every major car manufacturer is fighting to partner with? That's you." Lucas nodded. "Our market valuation hit $12 billion last week. Not quite Sterling Global territory, but we're getting there." I couldn't help but laugh at my father's expression. All those months of looking down on my poor husband, and Lucas had been building an empire right under their noses. "And now," Lucas continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge, "I'd like to discuss how you treated your daughter. The woman who, by the way, just became one of the largest shareholders in Wright Dynamics when she married me." My father's face paled. Sterling Global had been trying to break into the electric vehicle market for years. Having a connection to Wright Dynamics would have been a game changer. "Now see here," my father blustered, trying to regain control. "We were just looking out for Isabella's best interests by disowning her." Lucas's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "By trying to get her fired? By making her cry herself to sleep for weeks?" "Daddy." I finally found my voice. "You always taught me that Sterlings never settle for second best." Well, I didn't. I married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man I've ever known. And I did it without knowing about any of this. "Isabella, sweetheart," my mother stepped forward, arms outstretched. "We were wrong. We see that now. Please, come home." I looked around the magnificent office, then at Lucas, my wonderful husband who had let me find my own way, support myself, and grow stronger. "I am home, Mom. But if you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to accept us on our terms. No more manipulation, no more control." My father looked like he was choking on something particularly unpleasant. "And what about Sterling Global?" Lucas smiled. "Well, sir, we've actually had several offers from your competitors for exclusive partnerships, but I thought, given the family connection, we might consider a different arrangement. If you're interested in discussing it as equals." The next hour was surreal. My father and Lucas talked business while my mother fussed over my terrible apartment and insisted we move into a proper home. Montgomery had slunk away somewhere, probably to lick his wounds. Later that night, back in our small apartment, I finally asked Lucas the question that had been burning in my mind. "Why keep working at the garage? Why live like this when you have billions?" Lucas pulled me close. "The garage keeps me grounded, reminds me where I started, and this apartment, these months with you, they've been the happiest of my life." We made it ours, together, without any silver spoons or trust funds. Tears welled in my eyes. "I love you, you sneaky billionaire." He laughed. I love you too, you runaway heiress. Life changed after that night, but not in the ways people might expect. We did move, but into a modest house we chose together. I joined Right Dynamics as head of their charitable foundation, using our resources to help other young entrepreneurs. Lucas still spends time at his original garage, teaching mechanical skills to underprivileged youth. My parents, well, they're trying. Mom still makes not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren needing trust funds, but Dad has developed a genuine respect for Lucas. Their weekly business meetings often turn into lengthy discussions about everything from classic cars to philosophy. As for me, I finally understood what Lucas meant about life being too short to live it on paper. Sometimes the best things come disguised as broken-down Ferraris and coffee from vending machines. But the best part? Every now and then, when we drive past our old apartment or grab Thai food from our favorite takeout place, Lucas still looks at me the same way he did when he was just a mechanic and I was just a rebel heiress. Because in the end, love doesn't care about bank accounts or business empires. It cares about who you are when everything else is stripped away. And we were simply Isabella and Lucas, a mechanic and a runaway heiress who found something better than billions. We found each other. I continued eating dessert while listening to detailed plans for buying out investors who would never sell because the investors were me. I was sitting at the table listening to plans for my own elimination from the business I'd built. The important thing, Sterling concluded, is that family money stays in real family. Not charity cases we took in. Not outside investors looking for quick profits. Not anyone who doesn't understand what the Sterling name really means. The table erupted in agreement. Various relatives praised Sterling's wisdom, his loyalty to family values, his commitment to keeping the business where it belongs. To family, Sterling declared, raising his wine glass. And to keeping what we've built in the hands of people who deserve it. Everyone toasted except me. I was mentally calculating exactly how much Sterling's empire was worth without my investment, and wondering how long it would take him to understand that his charity case niece had been his silent partner for 15 years. Elena, you're being awfully quiet, Sterling observed. What do you think about all this succession planning? I think you should do whatever you believe is right for your family, I replied. I knew you'd understand. You've always been practical about knowing your place. The evening concluded with more family bonding, promises to gather again at Christmas, and detailed discussions about the construction company's bright future under Brad and Connor's leadership. I helped clean up while listening to conversations about legacy, family values, and the importance of keeping business ownership in the right hands. Driving home, I reflected on 15 years of silent partnership with a man who publicly dismissed me as a charity case while privately depending on my capital to fund his lifestyle. Sterling genuinely believed his success was self-made. His investors were passive financial partners, and his adopted niece was an accounting clerk who'd never understand real business. Sunday morning, I called my attorney from my home office. Diane, I need to discuss the Sterling Construction Partnership, the $200 million position. What are you thinking? Complete dissolution. I want out of every investment vehicle, every joint venture, every financial relationship. There was a long pause. Elena, that's essentially their entire capital base. Without your investment, They're looking at an immediate liquidity crisis. Probably bankruptcy within 6 months. I understand the implications. This isn't just about Sterling's company. 3,000 employees, dozens of subcontractors, multiple ongoing projects. The collateral damage will be extensive. I thought about Brad and Connor's graduation parties I'd helped fund. Madison's art school tuition that came from partnership distributions. Sterling's lake house that existed because of my capital injections. How long will the dissolution process take? Given the complexity of the legal structures, probably 4 to 6 weeks. But Elena? Once this process starts, there's no undoing it. Are you certain this is what you want? I'm certain. I'll need documentation of cause for dissolution, contract breach, material changes in partnership structure, something that justifies immediate withdrawal. Sterling announced yesterday that he's planning to buy out all investors to keep the business in family hands. I said, I'd say that constitutes a material change in our partnership agreement. That should be sufficient legal grounds. I'll begin drafting the dissolution documents. Monday morning brought a busy day of meetings with attorneys, accountants, and financial advisors. The legal mechanics of unwinding a $200 million partnership were complex, involving multiple shell companies, joint ventures, and investment vehicles that had been carefully structured to maintain my anonymity. Diane's team worked with surgical precision to identify every aspect of my financial relationship with Sterling's empire: real estate holdings, equipment financing, working capital loans, expansion funding. The web of financial interdependence was more extensive than even I had realized. The cascade effects will be immediate, Diane explained during our afternoon meeting. Equipment lease payments will stop. Construction loans will be called. Working capital will disappear. Sterling is going to wake up Thursday morning facing complete financial collapse. What about employee protections? We can structure the dissolution to prioritize payroll and benefits. But ultimately, Sterling will need to find replacement funding or begin liquidation proceedings. And the likelihood of him finding replacement funding for $200 million, given his debt ratios and cash flow requirements, is essentially zero. Tuesday brought news that Sterling had already begun reaching out to banks and investment firms about restructuring our investor relationships to optimize family control. His timing was impeccable. He was actively seeking to eliminate me from the partnership just as I was eliminating myself. Wednesday afternoon, Diane called with an update. All dissolution documents have been filed. Sterling's attorneys will receive notification tomorrow morning. Asset liquidation begins immediately. How long before he understands the scope of the situation? Based on the cash flow models, he'll start seeing problems by Friday. Bank calls, supplier payment issues, payroll concerns. The full scope will probably take a week to sink in. Thursday morning, I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone began buzzing with family group chat notifications. Sterling, temporary cash flow issue with the company. Working with our financial team to resolve quickly. Brad, Dad. Is this serious? The bank called about our construction loan. Connor. Equipment company wants immediate payment on our lease agreements. Madison. What's happening? Should I be worried? Sterling. Just business complications. Nothing that can't be handled. The messages continued throughout the day, escalating from temporary issues to significant challenges, to an emergency family meeting called for Saturday. Friday brought more urgent communications. Sterling's confident morning message about minor setbacks was followed by increasingly frantic updates about bank meetings, attorney consultations, and unexpected investor complications. By Saturday morning, the family group chat had evolved into a full crisis communication channel. Sterling. Family meeting moved to my office. Lake House events canceled until further notice. Brad. Dad. The employees are asking questions about their jobs. Connor. Should we start looking for emergency funding? Madison. Can someone please explain what's actually happening? I arrived at Sterling's corporate headquarters to find the parking lot nearly empty and a small group of family members huddled in the conference room. Sterling looked like he'd aged 5 years in 1 week. Elena. Thank God you're here, he said, looking genuinely relieved to see me. We need all the family support we can get right now. The conference room felt different than usual. Instead of Sterling's confident presentations about expansion and success, the atmosphere was tense with barely controlled panic. I'll be direct. Sterling began. Our primary investor partnership has been terminated. Effective immediately. Without cause. Without warning. Without negotiation opportunity. How much money are we talking about? Brad asked. Approximately $200 million. In various forms: equipment financing, working capital, expansion funding, real estate holdings. The room fell silent as people processed the magnitude of the crisis. Before we find out how the family deals with this collapse, if this story is resonating with you, or you've ever felt underestimated by those close to you, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. Your support helps me continue telling stories like this one. Can we replace that funding? Connor asked. I've spent the week meeting with every major bank and investment firm in 3 states. The answer is no. Our debt-to-equity ratios are too high. Our expansion has been too aggressive. Our capital requirements are too extensive. What does that mean for the company? Madison asked quietly. It means we're looking at bankruptcy. Complete liquidation. 3,000 jobs lost. Dozens of projects canceled. 15 years of building completely destroyed. The silence stretched longer this time. Sterling's empire, his legacy, his family's future, all of it crumbling because his anonymous silent partner had chosen to withdraw support. The thing I don't understand, Sterling continued, is why now? Our investor partnership has been stable for 15 years. Profitable. Professional. No conflicts or complications. Then suddenly, complete termination with no explanation. Maybe they found better investment opportunities, Brad suggested. Maybe they needed liquidity for other projects, Connor added. Sterling shook his head. I've been racking my brain trying to understand what changed. The only significant development was my announcement last weekend about succession planning and buying out our investors to keep the business in family hands. You think they didn't like that idea? Madison asked. I can't imagine why. It was a business decision. Nothing personal. We would have paid fair market value, negotiated reasonable terms, maintained all existing relationships. I listened to Sterling struggle to understand why his plan to eliminate his investors had resulted in his investors eliminating him. The irony was perfect, but explaining it would serve no useful purpose. The question now, Sterling continued, is what we do next. Bankruptcy proceedings will probably take 6 months. After that, I'll be starting over at age 58 with no assets, no company, no income. What about the lake house? Brad asked. Financed through company assets. It'll be part of the liquidation. The boats, the cars, the investments, all tied to company cash flow. Everything goes. The family spent the next hour discussing practical matters, job searches for Brad and Connor, living arrangements once the lake house was sold, college funding for Madison, now that partnership distributions had disappeared. I keep thinking there must be something we can do, Sterling said. Some way to contact our investors directly. Negotiate a compromise. Explain that this affects thousands of people who depend on us. Do we know who they are? Connor asked. That's the frustrating part. 15 years of partnership, and I never met them face to face. Everything went through lawyers and shell companies. Professional, but completely anonymous. Why would they structure it that way? Madison wondered. Privacy, I assume, Sterling said. Some investors prefer to stay behind the scenes, especially with family businesses. Less complicated that way. I could have explained the real reason for anonymity, that watching Sterling take credit for my business strategies while dismissing me as a charity case had provided 15 years of educational entertainment. But that conversation would come later. If at all. The hardest part, Sterling continued, is knowing that someone out there made a decision that destroyed everything we built, and we'll never even know who they are or why they did it. Maybe it wasn't personal, Brad offered. Maybe it was just business. Maybe. But the timing feels deliberate. Right after I announced plans to buy them out and keep the business in family hands. Like they were sending a message. What kind of message? Madison asked. Sterling was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe that family loyalty only goes one direction. Maybe that some people can't be bought out because they're not really investors. There's something else entirely. The meeting concluded with plans for Monday's bankruptcy filing, employee notifications, and media management. Sterling's construction empire would officially end within 30 days, taking with it the lake house, the lifestyle, and the family legacy he'd spent 15 years building on borrowed capital. Driving home, I reflected on the strange justice of watching Sterling's plan to eliminate his charity case investor result in his charity case investor eliminating him. The symmetry was perfect, even if he'd never understand it. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Liquidation, proceeds from Sterling Construction Partnership, will total approximately $180, $8 million, after legal fees. How would you like those funds distributed? I pulled over to reply. Establish scholarship fund for business students from foster care backgrounds. Use the Sterling Construction name if possible. Understood. Anything else? Send anonymous notification to Sterling when the scholarship fund is announced. He might appreciate knowing his legacy will help people who understand what it means to be charity cases. 3 months later, the regional business magazine featured a story about the Sterling Construction Scholarship Fund, established through an anonymous donation to support foster children pursuing business degrees. Sterling never learned that his former charity case niece had transformed his collapsed empire into opportunities for young people who, like her, had been told they didn't belong in real families, but might surprise everyone with what they could build when given the chance. Sometimes the most powerful legacy isn't the one you plan. It's the one that emerges when the people you underestimated decide to show you what real family values actually look like.